Hi, my name is Stevie and I like to write songs. Today I feel like making a music video. So I've released quite a few songs recently and I really think some of them should have music videos. So I'm going to go through the process today about how to make a music video. So we'll look at doing some chroma keying with green screens and we'll look at some of the video editing processes that I use for making one of my videos. So let's have a look at that. I knew we'd do it, but it was such a pleasant surprise when I got the message from YouTube. It means so much to me, guys, and every single one of you who subscribed and comments on the channel and all, thank you so much. You guys rock. Making a music video is all about preparation. So one of the first things that I do in preparation is make a version of the track that has a click at the very start. So what we've got is this. One of the most important things is to make sure that the audio and the video are in sync with each other. And so when I play this track so that I've got a reference to lip sync and play the guitar along to, I have these 4 clicks at the very start, which are very easy to see. Now, the audio will be recorded into the camera, and on the camera audio, I can line them up in the editing software later on. So I'll show you how that works later on when we get to the editing, but I've got these clicks anyway as a reference for the sync on the video. The camera that I'm going to be using today for recording the video is this LUMIX G7. It's not the best camera in the world, but it's a pretty good camera and it can shoot in 4K. Now, I'll do a wee bit of chatting about 4K first. Now, let's talk about 4K versus 1080p first. Typically, when I release one of my videos, I'll release it in 1080p. In other words, that's the size. It's high definition. I film it in 4K, and the reason why I do that is because it gives me scope later on to zoom in and out and reframe stuff without losing any quality. Because if I shot in 1080p and then zoomed it in, I would lose some of the quality, but because it's in 4K, I can zoom in twice the size and not lose any quality at all, so that the output at 1080p is full 1080p. I've got some other little lenses that I use as well for the camera. This is a little wide angle lens that I sometimes use, and this one is my lens that's really good for depth of field because it can get a really, really low f number. But when I'm doing the green screening, I just use the stock lens that comes with the camera, because it's got an optical zoom on it as well, and sometimes it's a bit quicker for me to set up shots when I can zoom in and out. All these other ones don't have zooms on them. Apologies about the audio in this section, but I'm doing it on a handheld camera. It's the only way I could think of doing it, to show you around and let you see the setup. So I'm going to show you how I'm set up now for the green screen. So I've got a pop-up green screen in the studio. You could use any old green sheet, or you could buy some of the cheaper green sheets on Amazon, but this pop-up one, I like it because it tends to stretch out when you pop it up and you don't get as many wrinkles in the background, which makes it a wee bit easier for green screening afterwards. And I try to light the green screen as evenly as I possibly can using these cheap Amazon LED lights. I think they typically only cost about a tenner and is £6 for the stands that they're on. I've got 2 of them, and I want to position them behind me so that their main job is to get as even a green screen as possible. And then for lighting myself, I use this ring light. So from back here, we can see the green screen and we can see the LED lights at either side lighting up the green screen, and we can see the ring light. And then I have a tripod and I put the camera on a tripod. And then I can control it with the iPad from a distance when I'm standing in front of the green screen. So when I'm standing in front of the green screen, I'll move this light around and try and find the effect, the lighting effect that I want. Typically I want some kind of dramatic lighting effect, and I'll move it until I'm happy that it's getting the desired lighting effect. I'll have the lyrics printed out so that I don't have any difficulties remembering about the lyrics. And I typically have the keyboard for the computer over beside me so that I can use a shortcut to start and stop and rewind the soundtrack as necessary. And I'll have my iPad beside me as well so that I can set focus and check the lighting and so on. So the other tool that I use for shooting video that's very important is an iPad. The G7 has built-in Wi-Fi, and you can use an iPad to control the app. Now, there's a couple of functionalities for this that I think are quite important. The first one is that I can see what the camera sees on a very large screen, which is really cool. So it means I can be standing over where I'm supposed to be standing and look at this screen rather than the tiny little screen on the camera. The second thing is that I can set all my ISO and white balance and most importantly focus. And I can use focus peaking and stuff like that and make sure that I'm perfectly in focus. I always use manual focus, and I always want to set the focus manually whenever I'm actually in position and properly lit. So that's really important, and it saves a lot of running back and forward between the camera and my shooting position. So just to recap, I use a pop-up green screen, and I use 2 cheap LED lights, and I flood the green screen with light so that it's got a nice even color. Then I use a ring light on myself, and I stand in front of the side LED lights that are lighting up the green screen, and they slightly backlight me a wee bit, which separates me from the green screen a wee bit more as well. Then I have a ring light that's either to the side of me or in front of me, depending on what kind of lighting I want. And I use the G7 to film it, and I control everything with the iPad app. The other equipment that you'll need is a computer for editing and DaVinci Resolve. The good news is DaVinci Resolve is free, and we'll talk a wee bit more about computer specs when I get to that. So what happens then is that I press play on the music and hear the click, and then I start lip syncing or playing the guitar or whatever it is. And I keep doing that, getting different angles, mid shots, long shots, side shots, and so on, of the guitar parts and the vocal parts. And in this case, I shot about 10 angles. We'll have a look at that now. So this is DaVinci Resolve. It's a free program, and there is a paid version. I do have the paid version because there's 1 or 2 little things that I like in the paid version that isn't on the free version. But the good news is you can get started with the free version and do almost everything that you would ever want to do on it. You'll be quite advanced at video editing before you start feeling that you need to upgrade to the paid version. I have transferred the 10 angles that I shot on my Panasonic G7 from the memory card into the computer. So we'll want to go down to the cog button in the bottom corner and make sure that we have selected. We shot our video in 4K, so we want to make sure that we select 4K here. Ultra HD, so that's it there. And we don't need to worry about the actual frame rate. I shot these in 24 frames per second. The frame rate will automatically update when I start selecting media and moving it in. So let's select a piece of media and move it in, and there you go. So we'll change the frame rate to match what I shot. This is the cut page, and I prefer to be on the edit page. So we'll move to the edit page, and we'll take this in to our timeline. So if we zoom in now, we can see our clicks. And that means I can take the actual audio that I made with the clicks, and we want to put that audio right at the very start. Remove this stuff here. So I just press S to get rid of that, and backspace. And I want to move this click so that it lines up with this click. If we zoom right in to a frame, we can see now that these 2 clicks are right on the frame. So I have complete sync, and this camera audio is no longer needed. So we can press Alt, select, backspace, and remove it. And we can also tidy up by deleting any empty tracks. So now we have this video synced, and we can begin a process called compositing. Compositing is where we can do the green screen chroma key things and start layering other pieces of footage on top of stuff. We go to the color page to do this stuff, and in the color page we use a thing called nodes. I'm going to rename this node and call it crop, because the camera did actually pick up some stuff that's actually outside the green screen. Let's zoom out a wee bit so that we can see the full picture, and I'm going to want to crop out anything that's not part of the green screen. So we'll select this, and we'll select the drawing tool, and we'll just make this big enough. We can't see what has happened yet because we have to make what's called an alpha channel. Now, some video has a thing called an alpha channel, which is the transparency section of a video. So we'll add an output for the alpha here, and we'll drag this line down to the alpha output so that the transparency is coming down, and that's exactly what we want. So now we've done the crop, that's step 1 complete. The next step would be the chroma. If we go Alt-S to make a new node, we want the alpha to go through this as well because we're going to make another transparency in this one. And we want to select all the green and delete it. So we go to the keyer tool. And I like this little one where you draw across the colors that you want to get rid of. What I want to do is use my scroll wheel and scroll in as much as possible because the best place to select color on this is very close to the hair. So I'm just going to draw around it. Okay, so we're selecting a bit of the green, but it's not all that good yet. We'll want to add to the selection and do some big movements to select all of the green. And it's a bit dirty looking over here as well. Okay, so that's looking a wee bit better. So if we select this, it'll transfer it. Now, there's some problems with this already, but it's not bad. We can see green fringing around my hair, and we can get rid of that with this despill feature, which turns the green fringing into a sort of neutral grey so that it's less noticeable. Okay, so that's a big improvement. I always turn on this pre-filter and post-filter as well, because I always think they seem to help. All right, we're looking really good now. What we want to be very careful with here is things like this. This type of fringing here can really give it away as being green screeny. I'm not sure if you're going to notice that on... Let me zoom in and see if I can make it more noticeable in case it doesn't show up on the YouTube. Okay, so the best way I've found to get rid of that is to add some of this morph radius, which makes just the edge of the selection transparent. And I drag this up until it just about disappears. And so there at about 12, that's gone. Let's fit it back on screen. So I think what we've got here is a really good separation. Now let's talk about a wee bit about computers for a moment, because the first thing you'll notice if you try to install DaVinci Resolve is that you need what's called a GPU in your computer. Now I don't have a particularly powerful computer, so I've got a very cheap, I think it's an AMD 550 or something. It's a very old, cheap GPU. So it's very slow, and it wouldn't really be able to render this in real time. So my workaround for using a cheaper computer is that I use sub-projects. So for each of my camera angles, I'll make a project in DaVinci Resolve and do this and then export it so that it's already done and it doesn't need to be processed as I'm editing the final video. So we've got a couple of options here when it comes to what we want to do now as the next step here. Let me show you. The little rocket thing here is our option for exporting this. So we can export this as a rendered video as it is right now. And that might be cool if what we wanted was just a black background. We can select certain codecs here. If we select this GoPro Cineform codec and we select 16-bit, it gives an option here to export alpha, which means if I export this now, it'll just be exporting me and the black background will be gone. That'll be transparent. And then that way I can put it into the next project and put backgrounds and stuff on it. But that's not typically what I do. And I may start doing that in the future, but for the meantime, I go back to this page and I'll want to put a background in and just render the whole thing with the background and everything in situation. So to get myself a background, I went to one of the free AI programs and I asked it to make me a grungy factory. And this is what it came up with. So I'll drag it in. So it's square. So we're going to have to zoom in until it's wide enough. And that's looking good now, but it's the wrong way around. We need to move it down, move track down. Now we can see me standing in front of this. So that's pretty cool. So we can drag this out to be the full length of our whole clip. There's a few things that are noticeable here now. The color is completely different on me from what it is in the background. We could start editing the colors until we're happy with them. So let's go into the color page and select our background. And let's darken the background way down. That's looking a bit more like it. And do you know what? I actually think I might like to reverse the background. We'll just click this flip button here. We'll put the background on that side. And I think I would like to move me over to one side. So we'll do that. I'm a bit happier with that. That's looking a bit better. Let's go back to the color page again. And I think overall the whole thing's looking a bit colorful. So I'm going to select saturation here and we'll go down to say 20% saturation. Maybe too much. Let's try 30% saturation and do the same thing on the background. Right, so it's all looking a little bit colder now in a way that I think is quite cool. And I think looking at it now, I guess I would like to add an effect that pulls the two things together. So what I want to do is go into effects and find adjustment layer. Here it is. And if I drag this on, this will be on top and this will affect everything underneath. And I want to put an effect in here, which I think is called rays, light rays. Okay, we put this on. Now, that's obviously not what we want there, but we'll edit it. We're going to select add an angle. Yeah, I do want the angle to look like the light is coming in through the windows. Okay, so we'll make the light rays longer and we'll soften them, lower the brightness a little bit, and set the threshold so that it's not coming from my face. Bring the brightness up again a bit. Increase the length so that it's yeah. Okay, so that's looking a wee bit like the light coming in here is affecting me in a good way. But I'm now starting to notice that the black of my jumper is not quite as dark as the black here, which is giving a bit of a green screen effect. So we'll go back into the color and we'll adjust down the black levels, something like that. Let's go back and look at it on the timeline. Yeah, that's a lot better. So there we have it. There we have a composited image. This is just very quick. These are all the parameters that I would use for adjusting everything, but this is just a very quick run through. I would spend quite some time perfecting every little detail of this until I really feel like I've completely disguised the green screen effect. But that's what we have there, and I would go to the output page and I would select this GoPro Cineform and I would render this out, and I would do that with all 10 of my camera angles so that I've got 10 new versions of my camera angles and each one of them has the green screen already processed and the background already added and some lighting effects that make it look a bit more realistic. So we'll move on to that step now. So we'll go through this process 10 times for all 10 of the camera angles so that we will end up with all the green screening all done, and they'll just be able to play like normal clips. So we can start our master project now. So we've got a new clean project now. This is going to be the final output video, so we don't want this one to be 4K. And we could select 1080p, but I do like the bars at the top and bottom that make it look a bit cinematic, and you can do that by blanking out a 1080p. But there is an option down here where we can go for something like this, which I think looks really well. It's about the same resolution as 1080p. It's 2K wide, but it's not as high. So it gives that cinematic CinemaScope effect. So we'll select that and we'll click save. Now we can take our 10 clips and we can import them into the media pool. And it's going to ask us again to change it to 24 frames per second. So we'll change that. So these are my rendered clips. And let's look at the one that we were working on there, Fox Wide, I think we called it. We can bring it in. That is what I ended up with there. And we can see it looks reasonably realistic. I'll do some more color editing as the video progresses. The good thing about all these is that now that is the very start of the track. So I can import the actual audio of the track that doesn't have the click at the very beginning. Okay, and we put that at the very start as well. So we know these are in sync. You can actually see from the waveforms that they're in sync. And we'll lock this one because we don't want it to ever move. We don't want to edit this in any way. And we don't need this audio anymore. So Alt-click and backspace. Okay, and remove that. And I'll do that with all of my camera angles. Let's take in another camera angle just to show you. So we'll take in guitar side. Okay, slide it right back to the start, and now we know that it's in sync. We don't need the audio. So I've now got two tracks. I've got this track, and so what we do now is that we go through the track and simply press S anywhere we want to change camera angle. I could have all 10 tracks here in a row and select it, but let's just do it with these first. Let's say we want to have the guitar here and then we listen on to the audio, and we want to change back to the vocal here, and then here we want to change back to the guitar. So I'll delete the guitar from here, and then we can play through it and see the camera angles changing. Okay, so that's how we do all the different camera angles then, and they're all perfectly in sync. So I have spent quite some time on it, and I've made all the edits that I want with all 10 of the tracks. So now we have the video playing. Okay. And on watching the video, I have a few thoughts. One of them was that I changed this shot to black and white because I thought it looked better. But in some of the other shots, I felt that the color was still a wee bit on the bright side. So I went into the color tab, and on a lot of these, you can see that I have done some color work on them. I've desaturated them even more to give us more of a stark look. If we turn the saturation up, you'll see what I mean. So that's the kind of video that we originally had, and I went down to, I think, about 30. But that was the only thing that I really felt I needed to do color-wise. And I watched the video the whole way through, and I felt I still needed some more footage. So there's a thing in video that we call B-roll, and that's the extra pieces of video that aren't the actual performer singing or playing, just some kind of storyline. A typical one is like the old man that in the Metallica Enter Sandman video. So I thought I would go and look for some B-roll like that, because it's getting into wintertime in Ireland. The weather's not great. It's not a good time for doing B-roll myself. And in maybe some of the other videos I will do some B-roll. But I went on a search for B-roll. This video website, Pexels, I used it for getting some of the source stuff for my artwork as well. So I searched for Old Man in Distress. And I really like the look of this guy here. This one really, really caught my eye. And this is all video that's free to use. So I found a whole collection of videos of this guy in order to put in as B-roll. And let's have a look at some of that. So let's take one in and put it on a new channel. And let's look at it. Now, it's the wrong aspect ratio. So I think we need to change it to 1.35. It's now the correct aspect ratio. And I wanted to do some color stuff with this. First of all, I wanted it to be black and white. And I wanted to pull it down so that it's quite stark looking. So something like that. And then I also added a vignette to it to make it even more stark. Now that vignette's far too much. So let's increase the size. Something like that. So that's what I did with all my B-roll. So in any of the parts of the video where I felt it needed some B-roll, I just introduced some of this stuff and put it on the very top. So I now have my video with all my performance parts. So at this stage, the video is pretty much taking shape and almost finished. So the last thing I would like to do is put lyrics on it. This is a controversial thing. Not everyone wants to put lyrics on their videos, but do you know what? When I watch a YouTube video, I really like the lyrics, to be honest, so that I can read them while I'm watching the video. So the next step would be to add the lyrics, and we don't want them just coming across the bottom of the screen like they're subtitles or something. I purposely set up all my shots so that there's space. Look, there's space here to the left, space to the right, space to the left, space across the bottom, space to the left. So I've got these places where I've composed the video in order to have room for putting my lyrics in. So what we do when we want lyrics is that we simply go to the titles page and we see all these different types of titles that are available. You know? So there were a few that I really liked. I really liked this drop-in. This is really cool, and I wanted to use that for my lyrics. There's another one I used, I think it's called random something. Random write-on. Yeah, that. I like that one as well. and there was a slide in one. Yep. So these are the three main things, and you just drag and drop one of these on to your timeline, and then you can write in the lyrics that you need for it. So what you end up with is something like this. Could have been an exalted masterpiece. It's playing a bit jittery now because you can see the limitations of my computer. But that's okay. We know everything is in sync, and these lyrics should be fine because they're lined up with all the actual edits in the video. So I'm at the stage now where I can render the video out. So we go back to the rocket here. If we're doing it for YouTube, there's a YouTube preset here that we can select, but there's a few changes that I want to make. So I'm going to go to custom, select here the name of the file, Tree of Life, and where you want to save it onto the desktop. And we've had to select custom here to 48 by 858 because this is the resolution that we selected. It's not exactly 1080p. It's a slightly different, more cinematic version. And we're selecting, of course, the codec that's correct for YouTube, which is H.264. I always like to increase this to as much as possible. I usually find about 60,000 kilobytes per second and upload it like that. I don't use anything in the advanced tab. And then in the YouTube settings, we can select to upload directly to YouTube. And we can set it to private for now and select music. And then add to queue and simply click render and your video will be up on YouTube. So there it is. Hopefully I've covered everything that I do in a video. If I've forgotten some stuff, I'll put it in the comments. But that is how I make my videos once I finish a song, and this video is finished now and ready to go, so I've scheduled that for next Monday. So if you're watching this Monday, the video will be premiered next Monday on YouTube. If you're an expert at video editing yourself and you want to steer me in the right direction if I'm doing stuff wrong, then I'd love to hear from you because I'm always trying to improve the way I do things. And if you're getting into video yourself, please come to me with any questions or any areas of confusion that you might have about this subject, because it's quite a complicated subject and it took quite a lot of head scratching from me before I finally stumbled upon the process that I use for making these videos. So there you go. That's how to make a video for YouTube for one of your songs. I hope you found that interesting and useful. I hope you learned something. And thank you guys so much for watching. You guys rock.